I spent 10 years building our family business to $50 million. At Dad's birthday party, my sister announced, "You're worthless. Time to step aside." Dad nodded in agreement. So I left quietly, but the next morning when they arrived at work, I spent a decade building our family business into a $50 million powerhouse. At Dad's birthday party, my sister announced, "You're worthless. Time to step aside." And Dad nodded in agreement. I left quietly that night. The next morning at work, I introduced myself. "Hi, I'm Sarah Chan. And this is the story of how I learned that sometimes family can be your worst enemy, especially in business." For 10 years, I poured my heart into our small tech company, transforming it from a struggling startup into a thriving enterprise. But success sometimes breeds jealousy, even from those who should be celebrating your wins. I still remember when our business was nothing more than a tiny computer repair shop in a strip mall. Dad had started it 20 years ago, and even though it barely supported our family, it was his pride and joy. My sister Emma was always his favorite, the one who earned straight A's and went off to an elite business school. I was the quiet one who stayed behind to help Dad, while studying computer science at a local college. "Sarah, you're wasting your potential," Emma would say during her visits. "You should aim higher." But I saw something in our little shop that others missed. A spark of potential. While Emma was learning business theory, I was honing real-world programming skills and spotting market gaps. In my final year of college, I developed our first proprietary software. A simple, effective tool for small businesses to manage their inventory. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was user-friendly and affordable. Dad was skeptical at first, but when local businesses started buying licenses, he said, "Maybe you're onto something here, kiddo." Those words meant the world to me, even if I didn't know how short-lived that support would be. Under my guidance, the business grew steadily. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week, while Emma was busy climbing the corporate ladder at a prestigious New York consulting firm. Our little repair shop evolved into a software development company, and our client base expanded from local stores to national corporations. Mom always reminded me, "Don't work too hard, Sarah, you need a life too," as she brought dinner to my office. But I was driven by a vision and a deep desire to prove myself. 5 years into our transformation, we hit our first $1 million in annual revenue. That's when Emma suddenly reappeared. She quit her job in New York and moved back home. "I think it's time I took my rightful place in the company," she announced at a family dinner. Dad beamed, saying, "That's wonderful, princess. We could really use your professional touch." I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, stunned that the company I'd built from nearly nothing was being handed to her on a silver platter. I swallowed my objections and tried to be a team player. Emma was named co-CEO alongside me, even though she had no real experience in our industry. Dad said it would boost the company's image to have someone with her credentials at the helm. I concentrated on product development and operations, while she handled marketing and investor relations. Over the next 5 years, I continued to build innovative software and nurture client relationships, whereas Emma focused on cultivating a glamorous public image. She gave interviews about being a woman in tech, accepted awards for entrepreneurship, and took credit for innovations my team and I had created. Our revenue eventually soared to $50 million a year, but so did the tension between us. Emma started excluding me from key meetings, making decisions without my input, and slowly pushing me aside from the company I'd grown. Then came Dad's 60th birthday party. The day everything changed. Emma organized the event, renting the grand ballroom at the city's priciest hotel, and inviting all our business associates. It felt more like a networking event than a celebration, but that was Emma's style. Everything had a purpose. I arrived early to help with the preparations, wearing a simple black dress that Emma immediately criticized. "Couldn't you have put a little more effort into your outfit? These are important people tonight," she hissed. I brushed off her remark and focused on greeting guests as they arrived. The room filled quickly with business contacts, clients, and family friends. Emma worked the room like a seasoned politician, while I stayed in the background, ensuring everything ran smoothly. During dinner, Emma raised her glass and began her speech. I expected a heartfelt tribute to Dad or some nostalgic memories of our childhood. Instead, she dropped a bombshell that shattered our family. "As we celebrate Dad's 60th birthday," she began, her voice echoing across the silent room, "I think it's time to announce some changes at Chan Technologies. The board has agreed that we need unified leadership to move forward." My heart skipped a beat. Board meetings? What board meetings? I thought. We've been held back by outdated ideas and resistance to change. Emma continued, her eyes locked on me. "That's why, effective immediately, I will take over as sole CEO. It's time for certain elements that no longer serve our growth to step aside." The room erupted in murmurs. I sat frozen as she launched into a thinly veiled attack. "Some people are better suited to technical roles rather than leadership. My sister Sarah has done fine maintaining our legacy systems, but to compete in today's market, we need vision and excellence. Frankly, Sarah, you're just not cut out for this level of business." I looked to Dad, hoping he'd stand up for me, but he simply nodded along with Emma's words, a proud smile on his face. Mom stared down at her plate, her hands trembling. Emma's voice grew louder. You're worthless in today's business world, Sarah. Your old-fashioned ideas and lack of formal business training have become a liability. It's time for you to step aside gracefully. The silence was deafening as every eye in the room turned to me, filled with pity, scorn, and judgment. Every sacrifice I'd made was being stripped away in that moment. Slowly I stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the floor cut through the silence like a gunshot. Everyone expected tears, a shouting match, or some dramatic scene. Instead, I calmly picked up my purse, walked to Dad's table, and placed a small wrapped package in front of him. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said quietly before leaving the ballroom with my head held high, leaving behind a trail of whispers and stares. That night, in my home office surrounded by awards and patents bearing my name, I made a decision. Emma thought she'd won, but she forgot one crucial detail. One that would turn her moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of her life. As I powered up my laptop and began typing, a small smile crept onto my face. Tomorrow is going to be interesting, I thought. After all, there's more than one way to run a successful business, and in 10 years I learned more than Emma ever did in all her fancy business classes. The next morning, everything changed, changes none of them saw coming that would reveal just how much I really meant to this company. I arrived at the office early, before anyone else, and waited until exactly 9 a.m. Emma strutted through the front doors with Dad beside her, both wearing triumphant smiles that were about to vanish. "Sarah," Emma said, her tone mixing surprise with annoyance. "What are you doing here? I thought after last night you'd have the dignity to stay home." I smiled, recalling the email I sent at 3 a.m. to every major client, partner, and employee at Chun Technologies. It simply read, "Wrapping up some loose ends, sister dear." But since she was there, I decided it was time to talk about the company's future. Dad interjected firmly, "There's nothing to discuss. Emma's in charge now. The board has already approved it." "Yes, the board," I said, pulling out my tablet. "Let me explain. While Emma was busy planning parties and giving interviews, I was busy building this company. And there are a few things you both seem to have forgotten." I displayed a document on the conference room's main screen. "First, let me remind you that I own 51% of Chun Technologies shares. When we incorporated 10 years ago, Dad gave Emma and me equal shares of 25% each, keeping 50% for himself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital for expansion, Dad sold me an extra 26% of the shares. Remember that day? Dad was too busy at Emma's award ceremony to handle the negotiations, so he signed the papers without reading them carefully. Their faces went pale as their perfectly manicured hands gripped the conference table. Emma whispered, "That's impossible, Dad would never do that." I continued, "And that's not all. The core software that generates 80% of our revenue isn't actually owned by Chun Technologies. It belongs to my separate company, Innovate Solutions LLC. Chun Technologies only has a licensing agreement, which is about to expire." I checked my watch. About 10 minutes ago, Dad collapsed into a chair as the truth hit him. "The renewal papers, the ones you asked me to sign last week because you were too busy helping Emma plan the party, I decided not to submit." Emma's face contorted with rage. "You underhanded little," she began, but I cut her off. "You might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence. While you were busy announcing my so-called graceful exit last night, I was sending emails to our clients. Most of our major clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts. They signed with Chun Technologies because of my expertise and track record. Last night, I informed them of the leadership changes and my departure. I pulled up my email, showing dozens of responses already received. Would you like to know how many have triggered their contract termination clauses? Or how many of our top developers, who, by the way, are actually employed by Innovate Solutions, have left? Already, they'd accepted positions at my new venture. The room fell silent. Through the glass walls, I saw employees gathering with anxious looks as they checked their emails. Emma's flawless composure began to crack as she frantically scanned her phone. "You can't do this," she stammered. The company you tried to steal from me." I finished for her. "The moment you humiliated me in front of everyone, that company ceased to exist. You thought you could take over because you have an MBA and Dad's blessing, but you were wrong." I stood, smoothing my dress, and laid out your options. Option 1. I walk away with my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Chun Technologies becomes an empty shell, and you can spend the rest of your life explaining to those influential people why the company's value plummeted overnight. I glanced at Dad. His face had aged a decade in just 10 minutes. Option 2, I continued. You both resign. I take full control of Chun Technologies, and you keep your shares as silent partners, collecting dividends with no say in operations. Emma, you'll get a generous severance package and glowing references for your next job, somewhere far away. Emma's face flushed a furious shade of red. "You planned this all along, didn't you? You've been waiting for the perfect moment to stab us in the back," she accused. I laughed bitterly. "No, Emma. I spent 10 years trying to be a good daughter and sister while you both took me for granted. I built this company from nothing, while you collected accolades for my work." I checked my watch again. About 12 hours ago, after you called me worthless in front of everyone, My phone buzzed with yet another client termination notice. Time's running out. What's it going to be? The next hour passed in a blur of paperwork and lawyer meetings. By noon, I was alone in what was now my office, gazing out over the city. The company I built was truly mine, but the victory felt hollow. Family ties lay in ruins and trust was shattered like broken glass. That evening, Mom came to see me, her eyes red from crying. "Did it have to end this way?" she asked softly. "They left me no choice," I replied, my voice gentle but firm. "They would have taken everything I built and tossed me aside without a second thought." She nodded slowly, understanding yet sorrowful. "What happens now?" she asked. I showed her the plans I'd already mapped out. Expansions, new product lines, innovations I'd held back. Now I'm building something even bigger. This time, I won't have to carry people who see me as worthless. Over the next year, Chun Technologies, under my sole leadership, tripled in value. Emma found a job with a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled but hopefully wiser. Dad retired, finally realizing that his so-called golden child had nearly destroyed his legacy. Now we only meet at holidays, maintaining a polite distance that barely hides the wounds that may never heal. Sometimes, late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for what we lost. Then I remember that fateful night at Dad's birthday party. The disdain on Emma's face and the way Dad nodded along with her cruel words. In business, as in family, respect isn't given. It's earned. They learned that lesson too late. I also learned that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones dismissed as worthless, are the ones you should never underestimate. We're the ones who know how to build something from nothing and how to take it all back when someone tries to steal it. My story spread through business circles as a cautionary tale about underestimating the wrong person. These days, when I attend industry events, I often hear whispers, "That's Sarah Chan," the one they never finish the sentence about. But my success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Emma's business school graduation ceremony. The topic: Hidden Strengths, the Power of Underestimated Leaders. I accepted with a small smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have quite a story to tell. The company continues to thrive under my leadership, but more importantly, I found peace in my choices. Sometimes the strongest message you can send is simply proving people wrong. And sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about rising so high that they're forced to confront their own mistakes. As I write this from my office overlooking the city, I recall my mother's words. Success is the best revenge, but wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start focusing on growth. She was right. I've moved past the need for revenge. Now, I focus on building something meaningful, something that will outlast petty jealousies and family drama. I still keep that wrapped birthday present I never gave Dad, along with a photo album chronicling the company's journey from that tiny repair shop to what it is today. Perhaps someday, when the wounds have healed enough, I'll finally give it to him. Until then, it serves as a reminder that our greatest strengths often come from the very things others underestimate about us.